The Custard Heart by Dorothy Parker is the fourth book of the Penguin Modern series, and this is a five-star book. This is only £2, so you can get quite a quick introduction to Dorothy Parker's work. The quote is, "She felt a cozy solidarity with the big company of the voluntary dead." Now, that might not make too much sense and doesn't give too much of a flavor of her writing, but I will put it in some context in a second. So we have three short stories here: The Custard Heart, Big Blonde, and You Were Perfectly Fine. The last being only a couple of pages long. And this is a really great collection. I think this really does sum up whether you will like Dorothy Parker. Like, you will know from this book whether you'll like her. And many people really like her. A lot of people find her okay. Barely anyone hates Dorothy Parker. So it's very likely that you're going to enjoy this. I'm going to read the beginning of The Custard Heart. No living eye of human being or caged wild beast or deer, domestic animal had beheld Mrs. Lanier when she was not being wistful. She was dedicated to wistfulness. As lesser artist to words and paint and marble, Mrs. Lanier was not of the lesser, she was of the true. Surely the eternal example of the true artist is Dickens' actor who blacked himself all over to play Othello. It is safe to assume that Mrs. Lanier was wistful in her bathroom and slumbered soft in wistfulness through the dark and secret night. So this first story is about a bit of a narcissist, about a woman who thinks so fondly of herself. And through this, I like to think of Dorothy Parker as like a female version of Oscar Wilde. She's so witty, she's continuously funny, but also serious at the same time. The only difference is Dorothy Parker's writing has more drinking and sex, and also has female perspectives and female main characters, which Oscar Wilde's works generally don't. Big Blonde, though, the second story of this, is what makes this really stand out to me. I think this book is very similar to The Bell Jar. If you like Sylvia Plath's writing in The Bell Jar, I think you'll love this. I think it's perhaps even more balanced, a more balanced view of a very similar perspective. And so anyone who loves Sylvia Plath's writing, I would recommend Dorothy Parker, because I think she writes from the same place. She's writing about New York City or living in a big city around the same time in America as a woman. And I think her perspective is lighter and more extroverted than Sylvia Plath's writing, but it still has the same gravity whilst being funny at times. So it's a lot more of a balanced read. Big Blonde begins, Hazel Morse was a large, fair woman of the type that incites some men when they use the word blonde to click their tongues and wag their heads roguishly. She prided herself upon her small feet and suffered for her vanity, boxing them in snub-toed, high-heeled slippers of the shortest bearable size. The curious things about her were her hands, strange terminations to the flabby white arms, splattered with pale tan spots, long quivering hands with deep and convex nails. She should not have disfigured them with little jewels. This should be, I think, the second paragraph in Big Blonde should be what should be in the quote for this book, which is, "She was not a woman given to recollections. At her middle 30s, her old days were a blurred and flickering sequence, an imperfect film, dealing with the actions of strangers." A lot of these stories are dealing with the dating life of older women living in cities, and I think it gives quite a nice perspective on the drag of being an adult who's not made it to family life. I think Dorothy Parker's writing it's very playful. Although she might condemn certain things about culture, she does so with a light heart, with a custard heart, maybe. But yes, I really enjoyed this. So the first story is about a woman who thinks too much of herself. The second story is about a woman who thinks too little of herself. And the third story is about a woman who has gotten into a relationship a little too quickly. So you've got a nice variety of perspectives here. It reads a lot like The Bell Jar. She writes from a perspective of a woman. So she's very outspoken as a writer. Dorothy Parker really writes as you think that woman would feel in this situation. So it's nice to have some realism for once. I have a strange tendency to, when I find a female author I like, to read all of their works, and I've done that with Carson McCullers. I'm almost finished with Flannery O'Connor's writings. I think Dorothy Parker is going to be the next female author that I complete, because I read a few things by her. Sometimes it's not always amazing, but it's always enjoyable. She is always enjoyable to read, and she's funnier than most other female writers, which is a rare thing and something that I really appreciate. So I really like this book, and I think you will too. If you don't want to splash out and do pounds, then you can check the link in the description for a free ebook of some of her other short writings that I've read. So you could read that. And if you enjoyed what the link I've got in the description as an ebook, then consider getting this, or consider joining me on this series. This is rivaling book one for the top spot so far. So we've had 2 great books and 2 not so great books so far. So we'll see how this series keeps going. So that's it for now. Happy reading.